Marriage is an event celebrated almost everywhere in the world, but how it is celebrated differs based on individual beliefs and culture. So what may be considered marriage in your culture may not be a complete marriage in another culture. So what do you think the culture of Aztecs is towards marriage ceremony? Well, in this video, we got you covered, as I'll be sharing with you exactly what a marriage ceremony was like for the Aztecs. But if I'm gonna bring you information, maybe you could do a little something for me before we dive in? You know, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, all that good stuff. So yeah, and if you're not subscribed to the channel, it would be the best time to do so, considering we're just about to hit 100,000 subscribers. So yeah, thanks for doing that. Let's move on. When it comes to marriage, most people want a wedding ceremony that reflects their native heritage, and the Aztecs have high regard for their cultural values and customs, to the extent that spirituality is held in very high esteem. Unlike another place where the laws are against child marriage, there is no such laws for the people of the Aztec. Aztec men, both commoners and nobles, will get married at the age of 20, while the women were much younger when they got married, at the age of 14 to 15. Just like every place where people in the society are sometimes classified into two, upper and lower classes or more, the people of Aztec can also be classified as such, and in that case, the lower class marriage is arranged by their parents. But the females could still refuse to get married to those who their parents chose. While a professional matchmaker usually arranges upper class marriages, they accept whosoever may be chosen for them. Wow, that's a pretty beautiful part of being from the lower class, so they can actually freely choose who they want to marry. In contrast, the nobles could only marry other nobles because marriages were often used to form political alliances. This means that marriage in Aztec is between couples of the same social class. Since they marry early, the marriages are arranged during their childhood, especially after puberty. The parents of the potential groom arranged Aztec marriages, and it was initiated through a process. First, they have to consult the extended kinship group, and then, the parents are to approach a professional matchmaker to meet the potential bride's family. And after that, the potential bride's parents would tell the matchmaker whether or not they accepted the proposal. It is expected that the brides are virgins before marriage. Marriage ceremonies had to follow certain rules to be legally recognized. A matchmaker brings the Aztec bride and groom together, while a soothsayer would pick a lucky day for the wedding. Still, the matchmaker would have discussed the dowry between the two families, and when the terms of the dowry were settled, the ceremony began. The bride's family always prepared a feast in honor of the wedding. The feast may last up to several days. Usually the marriage ceremony in Aztec is a 4-day event, with the wedding ceremony taking place on the first day. The bride would be elegantly dressed in a robe, her relatives would decorate her arms and legs with red feathers and apply a paste containing little glittering crystals on her face. The wedding would take place at the groom's parents' home. Incense would be burned as a gift to the gods, and a fire would be lighted in the hearth. And the groom's parents would offer the bride's parents gifts, often robes and mantles. Then the matchmaker would tie the groom's cape to the bride's shirt, while the groom's mother would give the bride and groom 4 mouthfuls of tamales to seal the marriage. Invitations to the banquet are sent out on the day before the wedding, and by midday all the visitors would have arrived. What I find surprising is that on the day of the marriage of the ceremony, the groom goes to the home of the bride's father, and the priest would discuss the duties and responsibilities of the married couple to each other, and then they would also bless the couple. Which then, I ask myself, why can't the priest do all of that during the ceremony? But, you know, it's the culture of the Aztec, and that's how things are done, and will continue to be done unless the people divert from their practice. After the whole marriage ceremony, the bride and groom are to stay in a bedchamber for 4 days to pray, and when the 4 days are over, they can begin to consummate their marriage. The matchmaker takes the woman to her new home on her wedding day by carrying her on the back. In most cases, the matchmakers were older women. There is no doubt that carrying a young bride was difficult at times, but it was part of their role. When the bride arrives at her husband's house, the bride and groom tie their strands together in front of his home's fireplace or cooking area. And once this is done, it means that they are officially wedded. The act of tying the knot is a very old tradition, not only in the Old World, the idea of binding two people together in a lifelong contract, but also in ancient Mexico. The marriage ceremony occurs at night, with a torch-lit procession leading the bride to the groom's house. After the marriage celebration, the groom is to work for the bride's family for some years, while the bride's mother must ensure that the daughter takes care of her husband properly. In Aztec, all the male children were raised as warriors, while the girls were raised to become wives and mothers. Although when it comes to childbirth, a woman who died during delivery is always honored as a warrior destined to be a goddess of the sun. The moment that a woman is married, she can start a business from her home, and if she's interested in any, she is solely responsible for how the home will be and how the children will be raised. In Aztec, marriage was conditional in the sense that after the birth of their first son, the couple could choose to divorce or stay together. Marriages could also be unconditional, lasting for an unlimited amount of time. Polygamy and concubines were permitted, but not so prevalent as it is only common in noble households. Marriage rites were only observed with the first or principal wife, and the children he had with her were considered his inheritors. While the poor citizens were more likely to have only one wife, Aztec families could dwell in single-family homes, but many chose to live in joint family households for economic reasons. Do you know that as polygamy is recognized, adultery is strongly frowned upon? This is one of the aspects of Aztec life that is truly fascinating. Adultery was not tolerated in Aztec culture, despite polygamy being tolerated. Adultery was popularly attributed to Tlazolteotl, the deity of purification and sins. To combat adultery, draconian measures were enacted. These were heinous and lethal. If a man was caught, the punishment appeared to be relatively light at times, but she will face serious and terrible consequences. And while if both adulterers are caught in the act, they are either stoned to death or the male adulterer is delivered to the female adulterer's spouse, who would serve as a judge in order to determine the fate of the adulterer. Marriage symbolized an Aztec's transition into full adulthood and community involvement. It is the responsibility of the Kelpilai to ensure that every young couple has enough money to start their household and participate completely in the district's life. The wife was in charge of the household's finances, which included market trading, grinding, cleaning, cooking, provisioning the home, and making the cloth and cloth. Weaving was also an important part of an Aztec woman's identity and economic independence. To some extent, women had power, but as the Aztec kingdom became greater, it appeared that women's influence and power waned. While they still had a lot of power in the homes, their power in public life dwindled drastically, especially those who weren't the principal wife. It is necessary that the husband is several years older than his bride because he must complete his education and his training before taking on the responsibilities of marriage. And that'll be all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I would, again, as I said in the beginning, appreciate it if you guys gave it a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and then maybe hit the bell icon so you get notified when we post new, awesome, informative videos. Later!